Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups, and it's time for the weekly comic book review. That's right everybody, thanks for checking out the video. I am Rockin' Robbie Billups. This is the weekly comic book review. It's the show where I read a lot of comic books, and I'll let you know what I thought about them. But first, I want to highlight Dynamic Forces real quick. Hop on over to Dynamic Forces. They got great collectibles and comics available for sale, signed books, remarked books, sketches, all that kind of stuff, right? But I do want to point out that right now, they got some really nice exclusive limited edition covers to Stray Dogs Dog Days issue number 1, including this fantastic Evil Dead 2 movie poster homage cover that I absolutely love. You can get signed copies, you can get non-signed copies. Check them all out at dynamicforces.com at the link in the description below or right up here in the video. And of course, remember to use the code Robbie at your cart. You'll save 10%. And we always start with the pick of the week. And this week's pick of the week, The Silver Coin, issue number 8 from Image Comics. This one's written by Matthew Rosenberg, of course, illustrated by Michael Walsh. This is Michael Walsh's baby. Silver Coin is an anthology series. Each issue is done by a different writer, and they all center around the idea of this cursed silver coin. And when the silver coin shows up, bad things are going to happen, right? And the stories can be set centuries ago, they can be set centuries in the future, they can be set just a few decades ago or things like that, right? This one is about this office building, and there's a janitor that works there. Meanwhile, one of the big wigs at this office building has just recently purchased this rare coin collection. The silver coin is one of them. This janitor starts kind of becoming obsessed with it, and his life starts spiraling way out of control. So you see all the politics of this office building between the janitors and the secretaries and the big wigs and all that kind of stuff. But it's a really interesting story about greed, about luck and opportunity, and how they can kind of get misconstrued with one another. Really interesting stuff going on here in the pages of The Silver Coin. But what it does, just like the last one by Rom V, is it packs a frickin' punch. My favorite issues of this series so far have been really good, punchy, like horrific type stories. This is the same type way. View it as something like Tales from the Crypt, but it's all centered around the silver coin. I loved it. Michael Walsh always does a fantastic job with the artwork, and this one he has to do some rather gory things, as you can tell from the cover, and it works exceptionally well. This was a rather solid week for comic books. There were a lot of contenders for the pick of the week, but honestly, I went with this one because you can just pick this up even if you've never read any other issue of Silver Coin, even if you haven't been keeping up with comic books for months, for years, for your whole life even. You can just grab this one and enjoy it for what it is. If you're a fan of horror, if you're a fan of anthologies, if you're a fan of really great artwork and really interesting storytelling, definitely check this one out. I thought The Silver Coin issue number 8 was one of the best ones so far in this series. It has been a bit inconsistent for me, a little bit post issue 2, but then it starts pulling itself back together. There are issues of this book that I just absolutely love. This is one of them right here. Silver Coin number 8, the pick of the week. Also, we got Primordial issue number 5 out this week, the penultimate issue of Primordial. We only have one more left. This was also a pick of the week contender. This one was very, very close because I've just been loving this book. Amazing visuals from artist Andrea Sorrentino. We got Dave Stewart on the coloring. It pops, right? So I've described this book as kind of like We 3 meets 2001 A Space Odyssey, right? You got Laika, the Russian dog that got sent to space. You got Miss Baker and Abel, the primates that America sent into space. And in this reality, they disappear. They wind up boarding some kind of ship. They get their intelligence increased, and they're off on this like crazy psychedelic journey, right? Meanwhile, there are these two scientists on Earth trying to solve the mystery of what has happened to these animals. In the last issue, we went way ahead into the future, and now we're picking back up in the future. This is 2024. The story, of course, starts in like the 50s and 60s. So we get to catch up on where the characters have been and what's going on, and really interesting stuff. And then the way that the story wraps up towards the end of here, heartbreaking. Like really, really solid stuff. Andrea Sorrentino, the way he's able to emote through these animals is absolutely striking through the artwork. The coloring is great. Like I said, super psychedelic. excellent composition. This stuff just works. These animals have an emotive quality that you typically do not see in comic book artwork with animals unless it's like super cartoony. And this is a little bit more realistic, but still a little bit out there. And like I said, great composition. Jeff Lemire's doing a great job with the story because this is one of those books. I have no idea where we're going. I never expected the turn to happen that led us into issue number 5, so I am super excited for issue 6 to see this conclude. This has been one of my favorite series of the last few months. Speaking of favorite series, one of my favorite series returns this week with Homesick Pilots issue number 11, kicking off the 3rd story arc. Dan Watters, Casper Wingard, Adia Bidikar, Tom Mueller. This book's freaking awesome. I loved it. So at the end of the last issue, the way that that cliffhanger happened, and knowing that that was the end of book 2, I was like, they better not start book 3 where it's like some time has passed and they just kind of tell us what happened, because at the end of the last issue, we were set up for a big confrontation between this haunted house and this mech robot built by the government. That's right, both powered by ghosts. So this is a story about these lead singers and these punk rock bands who somehow get coerced by either the haunted house itself or the government trying to weaponize this ghost mech technology. This is a crazy book. Wild ideas, really interesting concepts. So they're piloting these mechs or the haunted house as a mech through the power of the ghost. We start getting into the nitty-gritty detail here about how that actually starts working. Really interesting ideas and concepts and great characterization written by Dan Watters. The artwork by Casper Wingard is absolutely amazing. This is a big explosive issue. It does do a lot of explaining, but in the midst of it, it's just this big brawl. This is some really great stuff. Homesick Pilots, if you have not been reading it, you owe it to yourself to pick up book 1, pick up book 2, and then jump in here with book 3. Then we got to go with King Spawn issue number 6, y'all. This book excites me. I was thinking about this recently. The Scorched, issue 1, it was decent, it was okay. Gunslinger Spawn's been fun, and Spawn itself has been kind of okay, a little up and down, inconsistent lately, but King Spawn has just gotten better and better as each issue progresses, mostly because of the artwork. Holy freaking cow. Javi Fernandez, the artwork in this book is freaking amazing. And yeah, they're doing one of those 90s image centerfold things here, and I don't care because the artwork is just freaking slapping. Spawn looks super gnarly and very like scary, very horrific. Really freaking great stuff. We're bringing back old school type ideas. Billy Kincaid, Jason Wynn, it's all coming back. It feels like we now have some movement on Spawn. Now, we're not going to be super fooled by that because Spawn gives us the illusion of movement and progression and then kind of holds it back a little bit. But King Spawn 6 issues in, this book's been great. Great dynamic, kinetic artwork, really spooky, horrific, scary, and a really interesting story that's picking up on some threads that were started in the very earliest days of Spawn, nearly 30 years ago. King Spawn issue number 6. I loved that book. Then we got Aerosmith, Behind Enemy Lines issue number 1. What? Aerosmith is back? So Aerosmith was a book back in the Guerrilla Comics day. We're talking like 4th, 5th wave image stuff, right? Where they started focusing in on writers. Mark Waid, George Perez, who was writing as well as drawing, but Mark Waid, Carl Kiesel, and Kurt Busiek. They all went to Image, started doing their own creator-owned stuff. Aerosmith was one of Kurt Busiek's books, and I really liked it. So it was kind of like steampunky World War I type stuff. It's about this like, I guess, what do you call them? Like a battalion, a squadron of like fighters, but instead of like piloting jets, they each have like a little tiny dragon that they run around with. It has been years since I've even thought about this book, much less read it. So I read this one and I was a little lost. So if you haven't been reading Aerosmith, it's going to be interesting to see how you feel and vibe on this one. I thought it was all right. It's a continuation of some of the stories going on, but it kind of does sit on its own, but they are putting the original Aerosmith book back out in a hardcover edition that originally, by the way, when this stuff was coming out, it was DC Wildstorm. It was Wildstorm at first, that moved to DC anyway. However, that all works out. Apparently, when they reprint the original Aerosmith, there was some stuff that was censored to kind of tone down the violence and gore and even nudity, and they're gonna like undo all that, so it's a little bit more of mature readers. But Aerosmith Behind Enemy Lines number 1, It was interesting, but I got to go in there and dig out my old school issues and reread them because I did feel a little lost. But that was a book I loved back in the day. A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance is here with issue number 4. This book's been okay, but I'm not connected to the story. It's still really hard to figure out exactly what the events were that led to the situation that we're in. This book does not rely on dialogue at all. Andre Lima Araujo's artwork is amazing. I'm a big fan of his artwork. He's got this like, it's a detailed but very freely breathing type style. There's a lot of room here. It never feels cluttered, but there's not a lot of dialogue, and it's been that way since issue number 1, so it's really hard to anchor yourself into the characters, to the plight, to the plot, to the idea, and it's starting to lose me just a little bit. Like I said, love the artwork. The story itself is even decent, but it just feels thin or not connected enough to me as the reader. But A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance number 4 is here. That seems like it might be a trade weight for me. I don't know. We'll see what happens. When issue 5 comes out, we'll see how big the week was. Bolero is a new one out from Image Comics. This is oversized, and it's $5.99. And it was just all right. Really wasn't doing much for me. So it's about this woman. She falls in love with another woman. They go through a breakup. Now she's like making bad decisions. And all of a sudden she gets brought about with the opportunity to go into another universe and explore like let's say, like if you get off of a bad breakup, so you're depressed or something like that, and you got offered the opportunity, hey, you could go to this other reality. You can live there, and you guys are cool. Like it worked out there, and it's got a little bit of a twist there at the end that was kind of interesting, but kind of an idea from Nick Spencer. Infinite Vacation kind of did that whole thing, but in a much more exciting and exuberant type of way. So Bolero just was not quite for me. Issue number 1 out this week. Jumping over to Marvel, we have the 10 Lives of Wolverine, issue number 1, $5.99 for nothing. What is this book about? I don't know. I read it. I read it deliberately. I read it paying very close attention because I want to be excited about the X-Men books, right? I know, like once the Hickman stuff was wrapping up and we knew Hickman was out, I was like, come on, man. I'm trying not to let my expectations or my disappointment really factor into my enjoyment of these books, right? I want them to stand on their own. So I was really kind of excited to check this book out. It did not do much for me. The artwork's pretty decent. I've seen better from Cassara, but it's still pretty good. The artwork's all right. The story, it's kind of all over the place. It doesn't really quite reveal what's going on. I think they're trying to entice us with the mystery. Basically, in a nutshell, Wolverine is traveling through time somehow to try to save Charles Xavier's life in different points of his life. And then Omega Red is somehow time traveling, at least his consciousness and abilities through other... Why? I have no idea what the hell was going on. And it didn't appeal to me enough to really get me excited. What did they do at the end? Did they try to hook me at the end? Oh, that's the end? Yeah, what? What? It's basically going to be Wolverine jumping back and forth between different moments in his life, and Omega Red's soul is like possessing someone. Whack. I did not like that book. It just was like, what? $6? And you don't even really hook me. I think it's the mystery. They're expecting us to be enticed by that mystery, but it just did not work for me. She-Hulk issue number 1 is it was okay. So we got Rainbow Rowell and Roger Antonio on the artwork. I'm not really a super big fan of the artwork. Like, it's okay, but it's a little bit too sparse. Like, Araujo's artwork, for instance, on Righteous Thirst for Vengeance, it has detail, but it has a lot of space and room to breathe. So it feels a little bit light like that, right? But it also feels heavy and connected, and everything makes sense visually and perspective and all that kind of stuff. This one just doesn't really quite work for me. It's characterization of Jennifer Walters. I'm glad that Jennifer Walters is back to being like more of the old school She-Hulk, but it doesn't have that fun factor. Like, it's there a little bit, but there's not really a big threat. The villain that's used in here, which is Titania, I'm pretty sure, it doesn't really amount to much. It's kind of silly. It was a decent enough setup, but didn't really work for me. So she's trying to return to her life as a lawyer, but obviously she's been hulked out forever for the last several of her series and the Avengers run or whatnot, so they're trying to get back to that old school vibe, but it just ain't quite catching on for me in issue number 1, but it was decent enough. It was just all right for me. Artwork could be better, story could be a little bit more solid there too. Silver Surfer Rebirth, issue number 1. I like this book. This is pretty cool. Like, even with the logo and the corner box and everything, this is a throwback to the old school Silver Surfer days in the 90s. We even have, what do they call him? It's Genus Vell. It's Captain Marvel's son. What was his name? Back in those days, he had a really dumb name. I don't even remember what it was. I'm trying to figure it out right now. Can he do it? Can he save us? What is his legacy? Legacy, that's his name. It could have been something more like Extreme Legacy. Anyway, I really liked it. So it's Ron Mars and Ron Lem. So it's some of those original creators coming back, doing a Silver Surfer / Captain Marvel story set in those 90s days. So it kind of brings you that vibe, a little bit of that feel. Now, obviously, Mars and Lem ain't hitting on the same cylinders that they used to. So it's a little bit not as good as far as that goes, but it was still kind of fun to go back into those days. We got X-Men Legends, we got Symbiote Spider-Man. Marvel's been doing these series, kind of taking old school creators and going back to some old school feel. You know, we got a lot of people maybe not liking the newer stuff. They want to go back into the stuff that they enjoyed maybe when they were younger, when they were growing up or something, and that's what these books are for, and I'm all freaking for it. Silver Surfer Rebirth, not going to change your life, but I had a lot of fun with it. But I really had a lot of fun with Ben Reilly's Spider-Man issue number 1. J.M. DeMatteis, Dave Baldion, I think it's Dave. Is it Dave? It's David Baldion. I really liked this book. I thought it was great. J.M. DeMatteis is, first of all, a really solid writer. His use of language, his use of thematic qualities and characterization, and he had a lot of work with Ben Reilly, the character, so it's really cool to see him get to go back to that. This is more of what I was wanting, the vibe I was expecting from the Amazing Spider-Man Beyond stuff with Ben Reilly, which I think this has a new issue out too, but I'm not reading that one. But I liked this issue. I thought it was cool. We got a little bit of carry-on action. We got lots of like melodrama focused in on Ben Reilly. This is set in the days right after Peter and Mary Jane were moving away to Portland. He thinks that he's the true Peter Parker at this point, so he's going to become the true Spider-Man. It's cool to go back to this time with fresh eyes in an old school type of way. I really liked it. Thought the artwork was solid. Artwork was a little bit new school, but the writing was definitely old, and it was a nice combination that worked really well for me. Ben Reilly, Spider-Man number 1. I really liked it. Silk number 1. Didn't really like this one. I thought this one was at best decent, but it left a lot to be desired for me. I haven't really dug any of the Cindy Moon Silk books as a solo character. I think she's a fine character. I think she's interesting. I think there's stuff that can be done, but this book just didn't quite do it. It was a breezy read. It wasn't difficult to read. It wasn't a lull. It wasn't boring, but it just didn't pop. The artwork was kind of weak in my opinion, and overall I just didn't really like it. It's just going to be a series of miniseries to an ever-shrinking audience if they keep rebooting it. But Silk number 1, it's all right. Devil's Reign, Villains for Hire, issue number 1. This book was not very good at all. So Devil's Reign tie-ins. This one is focusing in on the Thunderbolts. Villains for Hire. They could have just called this the Thunderbolts, but why would you do that, right? So Kingpin's mayor. He's outlawing superheroes. He's doing his whole thing. That's what Devil's Reign is. And this is focusing in on his, his enforcers, basically. And it's Rhino, it's Electro, the chick version of Electro, the Agony's in there, so that was kind of cool. Taskmaster, but doesn't really work for me. The story, there's nothing to the story, to be honest with you, and the artwork was really subpar in my opinion, so I did not like this one. I'm not going to be continuing it, and definitely not necessary for your enjoyment of Devil's Reign, though it does have an ending, which is an obvious ending, that just look at some solicitations, you'll know what the ending of this book is. So we'll see where that goes. Devil's Reign, X-Men, same thing. Doesn't have much to do with the actual event. You don't need it to understand the event. This is focused in on Emma Frost, and there's Electra. It's just really freaking confusing. I just did not care. And honestly, if you care really hard about all these tie-ins, and you don't want the surprise ending of this to be spoiled, don't read this one first. So, these tie-ins, I'm definitely going to recommend that you skip them. Death of Doctor Strange, X-Men Black Knight. Okay. Death of Doctor Strange is given us some of these one-shots. Some have been pretty decent, but some haven't been, and this one just wasn't for me either. Focusing mostly on Black Knight. It's written by Simon Spurrier, Bob Quinn on the artwork. So if you have been following the recent Black Knight series by Spurrier and enjoying those, digging those, then you're probably going to want to read this because it's a one-shot continuing those same ideas or whatnot. It's mostly a Black Knight story, very little X-Men. The X-Men get like possessed by these demons that come through or something. Black Knight has to get in the, it's just not interesting whatsoever. The tie-ins this week were super whack, super whack. Then we got Hulk number 3. This is the most compelling issue of Hulk yet. But it's still just not selling me. I still think this whole idea of Bruce Banner turning Hulk into Starship Hulk, and he's piloting him, and he's got the Hulk psyche like locked in this engine room, and he's throwing like giant 100-foot tall Wolverines at him to fuel his rage, which fuels the starship, and he's going through the multiverse, and he's found another version of himself. And it's alright, you know, so it's kind of thinking like Venom Beyond, but that's a little bit of that with a little bit of this, and I don't know, it's alright, but it's not really coming across as a super interesting concept or anything like that. The Banner from this other world and that story, that was interesting, that was intriguing. Plus, we're starting to get introduced to a darker, more savage version of the Hulk that's inside there too. Hey, can you believe it? Donny Cates is coming in doing something that nobody else has done yet. There's a darker, more evil version of the Hulk inside of him, man. What happens when he rears his ugly head? Anyway, concept, weak. Execution on the story, kind of weak. Artwork, still pretty solid. But I do believe that the null of the Donny Cates Hulk run, I think we get his first cameos in here. I think everybody's banking on issue 6 being the first appearance, but whatever. This was better to me than issue 1 and 2, but it didn't quite get over the hump of the massive expectations people have on Donny Cates. I thought it was just okay. Then we got Venom issue number 4. I liked this issue. It's been a little bit of a slow burn, but Rom V is building up this story to a point where now he's about to hand it back off to Al Ewing to get more into some crazy, wacky, cosmic side of things. And I'm all for it. I'm digging it, right? It feels, though, that the story stepped back. The way that Donny Cates' run ended, you know, Dylan was going to be the new Venom. We were there. He would have the symbiote. They were bonded. It's cool. Then they do that thing. It's kind of like Fright Night 2 when it starts, and it's like the heroes of Fright Night 1, all of a sudden, they just neuter them, right? Like, oh, they don't believe in vampires anymore. Now Dylan doesn't want to bond with the symbiote. So it's kind of like, we know he's going to bond with the symbiote. Just get to it. Just get to it. But lots of interesting ideas are starting to percolate there in the background. Lots of connections are starting to be made, and there's some references. For instance, there's a Kang reference in here that I'm like, yo, what's that mean? So I'm excited to check that out. Venom is a little bit more exciting. Still not quite as exciting as the Donny Cates run when it first started. But these two big launches from Marvel, right now I'm digging Venom the best. But Brian Hitch's artwork starting to slide a little bit by issue number 4. Then we've got Moon Knight, issue number 7. Y'all see that new Moon Knight trailer? I'm down for that. I'm really excited. So Moon Knight, there's a variant cover for this by Raza or something like that. That's already jumping up in price. If you can get a hold of it, there you go. But I'm a cover A guy, even though that cover is super sweet. Moon Knight number 7, great as far as the story goes. Moon Knight is after Zodiac now, after the events of the last issue. His mission has been destroyed, but he's still doing it. He's still doing his thing. He's badass. I love the attitude. I love all of that stuff. There's a different artist on this issue. It's Sabatini. And don't really like the artwork as much as the art we got in the first 6 issues, so I thought that was a slide down. It does have an energetic quality to it, but it just doesn't quite have a refined finish or excitement that the artwork from the previous guy did. So I hope he comes back relatively soon. That being said, story was awesome. I love where we're going. The characterization of Moon Knight is spot on. I'm loving the book. Artwork, though, was a little disappointing. There's a moment in here where it's like, I'm going to show you. There's a moment where Tiger's on the phone, right there. Tiger's on the phone. Where's her nose? Where's her nose? Now, I know maybe you thought the colorist was going to take care of it, but there's no freaking nose there. So art was a little bad, but the story's still pretty freaking solid. Then we got Strange Academy, issue number 15. This has become one of Marvel's best, most unsung books out there. Scotty Young, Humberto Ramos, Edgar Delgado. Dude, Humberto Ramos has been doing this book for 15 issues. I for sure kept being like, well, this book's great, but how long is it going to be until a fill-in artist comes in and ruins it, right? No, it hasn't happened yet. This is Ramos and Young's baby, and it is absolutely great. New characters connected to different magical parts of the Marvel Universe. I shouldn't care, but I really do. I'm compelled by these characters. I'm compelled by their journey, by the mystery and what's going on. A little bit like Hogwarts in the Marvel Universe, but that's kind of a reduction of how awesome this is on its own, with its own ideas. You got this new character. This book started spiking up too, because what's this guy called? The Gaslight Man or something? What's his damn name? What's his name? Let me look it up. Gaslamp Man, whatever, Gaslamp. His first appearance on the cover, this has already started going up. I don't know why. His first appearance was in the last issue or whatever. But anyway, Strange Academy number 15. Really liked it. Let's jump over to some indies. Actually, before we jump over to some more indies, let's jump over to DC. We got Batman The Knight, a new miniseries focused on Batman. This is written by Chip Zdarsky, though, with artwork by Carmine Dijon-Domenico. I really like Dijon-Domenico's artwork, but it just doesn't quite have that vibrant, jump-off-the-page, electrifying quality that I'm used to seeing from his work in, say, like Flash and things like that. So the artwork was okay, it was decent, but I was kind of disappointed in it because I was expecting more. As far as the story goes, it's all right. I mean, it's the story of how Bruce Wayne decides, and all the psychological baggage after his parents die. It's the story of how Bruce Wayne goes off to train to be Batman. Like, we've seen this story done so many damn times. There's some interesting elements here, but it mostly just feels like retreads of some themes from Batman Begins, but done in not as an exciting or refreshing way. So nothing new, nothing exciting, and it just kind of felt boring and drab and dull, and just yet another Batman book that we don't necessarily need. Now, a lot of the Batman books, and we always complain, too many Batman books. A lot of them are good. This one, to me, not one of them at all. Did not like that one. Then we got Catwoman issue number 39. Definitely want to check this one out because it is the first issue of Teenie Howard. Typically not a fan of her work, and I wasn't necessarily a fan of this one. But I'll tell you what, Nico Leone on the artwork in this book is freaking awesome. The artwork is great. The writing was not. The writing holds the artwork back. The artwork is exciting. It's dynamic. It's got some great energy to it. But the story does not. The story drags it down, and a book that wants you to just like, wow, and go through it gets bogged down by excessive, overly verbose stuff. Really great coloring, though. Really great artwork, composition, layouts, and design. Really, really super impressed with the artwork here, but did not like the story at all. Don't like this new direction for Selina. Don't like the characterization, the personification. Just did not work for me. Then we got Nightwing issue number 88. Still liking it. Tom Taylor's doing a good job with Dick Grayson's character right here, bringing in a little bit of the Titans. In recent issues, Dick Grayson has found out that he's inherited, that's the word. He's inherited Alfred's wealth, right? So he's got all these billions of dollars. He decides that he needs to invest that back into the community. That puts a target on his head because over at Bloodhaven, the mayor and the gangster element, they don't want the city to be better, right? And so they're trying to kill him, and then he needs to get some help. And not just help through Batgirl or the Bat family, but the Titans show up. So that's really cool. I like the artwork. But I am starting to notice excessive overuse of digitized screen tone. That's starting to bother me just a little bit. That's the tiniest little nitpick. But I'm still liking Nightwing, issue 88 out this week. Detective Comics 1049, the third part of this Tower story, which is weekly in the pages of Detective Comics, written by Mariko Tamaki. Amazing artwork by Ivan Reis, but yet another issue, 3 in a row, where nothing happens. Nothing happens. There's no exciting action scenes. There's no adventurous thing. There's a mystery. Ooh, who's in charge of the tower? How are they rehabilitating these villains? They're giving them like these drugs. So like, ooh, what's going on there? There's a mystery, right? But it's not exciting. It's so dull. It's so boring. And it's just, what's going on? And you got great freaking artwork by Ivan Reis, just wasted on a book that's just a bunch of people running around being like, yo, this dude's suspicious. What's up with that? And you're like, yeah, we know that. Do something about it. Anyway, Detective Comics 1049. Not very good, man. And Green Lantern issue number 10, loved this issue. Jeffrey Thorne's been building this story, and Thorne has said, he's even told me on a live stream, he came in one day in the chat and said, Have patience. I'm telling a 12-issue story. Then you find out that he's actually telling chapter 1 of a 3-chapter story, each chapter being 12 issues, right? I hope he gets to see this all out, because this was a book that was a little bit up and down for me. There were ideas and concepts that I really liked, but it was kind of jumping around. Certain things weren't connecting right. And Jeffrey Thorne said, have patience. I'm glad I did, because issue 10, that's where it all starts coming together, including the origin of how Joe got a ring, all the Far Sector mystery, that starts getting revealed and answered here. All of this big, grandiose plan starts connecting here in issue number 10, and I freaking loved it. The excitement that I had in issue 1 and 2 of this series has completely returned, and I'm digging it. I'm loving it. Maybe we could have gotten there a little bit sooner. In today's market, you know, people are judging these books pretty quick. But I also applaud the idea of having a long-form plan, sticking to it, and then nailing this issue right here. Green Lantern number 10, loved it. The one thing that that book could have going for it, though, that it doesn't, is some really, really solid artwork. It's got decent artwork, but nothing super, super solid. Superman, Son of Kal-El, is here with issue number 7. I don't know why I'm reading this still, man. I don't really like the book. I feel like Tom Taylor's characterization of Jonathan Kent is off. Right? I really love the way he wrote Jonathan Kent filling and stepping into the role of Superman in Deceased. Loved it. I was expecting more of that. We're getting something different. In this issue, I start wondering, is it all part of a plan to set up something? Is the reason why Jonathan's acting so different because he's kind of like, he's trying to think of what I should do as Superman. He's trying to do something different, not necessarily just helping people, but he's trying to go far above and beyond that, and it's starting to bite him in the ass. And I'm wondering now if there's a certain character that's been recently introduced in here that's maybe manipulating Jonathan. I think that's a cool dynamic. I was done with this book. I, for some reason, picked up issue 7 and read it, and it's kept me intrigued for at least one more. But I'm still not necessarily digging it. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, issue number 7. I love the artwork in this book. It is absolutely gorgeous. It is beautifully rendered. The artwork is great. The coloring is great. The line work, the flow of that is amazing. Just like that Catwoman, though, an overly verbose script for no reason at all hinders the excitement of that artwork, and it's just not a good pair, and not a good matchup for me. I read this book. I felt it to be a little bit of a chore. It took a long time to get through it for me. And when it did, ultimately, like, just a couple little things happened that could have been done quicker. So even in an 8-issue story, I still feel like Tom King's kind of stretching it out. That being said, after I read it, I went back and just read it through visually, through the artwork, and it was way better. So there you go. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. One more left in that, so why not? Then we got The Crimson Cage. Issue number 2 from AWA Upshot. This is from our good buddies John Lees and Alex Cormack. Ashley Cormack there on the coloring. This book is freaking wild. I love this book. So it's the story of Macbeth reinterpreted during the 80s territorial Southern wrestling scene, right? So instead of someone having to kill a king to become king, he has to kill the champion to become the champion, right? And so in the first issue was the setup. And in the second issue, we get the dirty deed done. It is bloody. It is gory. It is all over the place. And you are starting to fall into this psychotic spell of this main character. And I freaking love it. This book was great. Another one, close contender for the pick of the week. I was looking there. I was just standing there staring at Silver Coin, Primordial, and Crimson Cage. And I was just like, this is tough. This is tough. Love this book. Like I said, it gets really wild, gets into the dude's head, into this madness that's starting to envelop in his world. I freaking love it. John Lees and the Cormacks just knocked this one, not just out of the park, out of the damn city. That book is freaking fantastic. Then we got Canto 3, Lionhearted, issue number 5, the penultimate issue of Canto 3, Lionhearted. Love it. Big battle issue. Big revelation on the Furies and their origin. This is a great story just about heroism, about hope, about fighting despair by just doing what's right. It's such a great book. Amazing artwork. I love Zucker's artwork as Tony on the coloring. Man, This book has been a joy, and sticking with it, even at times where I was kind of falling out of it, has been incredibly rewarding. Canto 3, Lionhearted, number 5. What a freaking fantastic issue. Then we got Purgatory, issue number 4 from Dynamite. Got that Ken Hazer TMNT number 2 homage. I'm loving these Ken Hazer. I love the Ken Hazer stuff. Ever since I started doing that show over at the Experience with Dynamite, there's a lot of Ken Hazer, like, cover sketches and stuff that we sell there. In fact, I got the Captain Carrot one right here, because I'm a huge old Captain Carrot fan, so I had to get that. That was a gift from Dynamite, actually, but love his TMNT homages, so I'm definitely going to be picking these ones up. Purgatory's fun. It's a book that doesn't take itself too seriously, but it's still kind of fun. Like, this is how not so seriously it takes itself. The name of the story is Witches Get Stitches, right? It's about these witches, and they find out there's this idea that Purgatory, when she feeds on someone, she takes on their personality. So these witches are trying to manipulate Purgatory into feeding on all of them so they can combine forces within her and take control of the body. There's also a really interesting concept that was really compelling to me, that when Purgatory kills a lot of good people, all of a sudden she starts acting like righteous because she's got all this good energy, but then she uses that to take care of bad people, and that flips back around. Ultimately, she starts acting evil again. So really like it. Decent and solid artwork, but a really solid, fun story that I'm having fun with. Fun, fun, fun. Comic books should be fun. Red Sonja, Black, White, and Red, issue number 6. This is how you do one of these color-themed anthologies and do it right. You're not trying to stretch too far with these stories, but you got great creators coming in doing what they do. The middle story in here is a little cartoony, didn't really like it. The ending story was okay, but that first story was great. Some really solid artwork, too, from Jonathan Lau. Really like the usage of the black, white, and the red there. Some great design and composition on those pages. Really pop, and that was the best out of the 3, but this has been a really cool anthology series that I will continue to read, because I thought it was going to end with issue 6. They gonna keep going. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Then we got Power Rangers here with issue number 15, another super exciting chapter in the Eltarian War. We got Zed versus Zordon versus the Imperial, all this kind of stuff. In the last issue, we had the White Tiger Zord and the Dragon Zord form into the White Dragon Tiger Zord or whatever. Wild, cool stuff. You finally see the Omega Zords combine in here. Like, really great, highly charged superhero stuff. It's got a brisk pace. It's got dense writing, but it's not something that, like the Teeny Howard or the Tom King this week, where it slows down the pace of the artwork. It actually works so well together. Power Rangers is a really freaking exciting book. I'm having so much fun with this. It's colorful, it's dynamic, it's got really cool concepts and ideas, and if you're a fan of the Power Rangers, this is the best it's ever been. And I know I like the original movie too. That's pretty dope. Anyway, 7 Secrets is here with issue number 13, kicking off the 3rd story arc, and I need to go back and reread the first 12 issues. I was lost. I forgot. I remember the people. I remember the concept of this book, but I was like, wait, where are we? What's going on? Is that a flashback? Is this a flash? What's going on? I was so lost, so confused. I didn't really enjoy reading this book just because I was like, first of all, it's been forever since issue 12. Maybe too long of a break, but definitely something I'm going to have to reread 1 through 12, find the time before issue 14 comes out, because if I was lost at 13, I'll be even more lost at 14. Yeah, anyway. Issue 13 of 7 Secrets is out, and then we're going to end it with The Rush, or This Hungry Earth Reddens Under Snow-Clad Hills. Issue number 3 from Vault Comics. I'm just not digging this book. I really had a lot of high hopes for this, so it's kind of about the gold rush. It's up in the Yukon territory, so it's like bitter cold. There are these men that go to these camps to try to find gold, and they wind up just dying from insanity or scurvy or malnourishment, you know, things like that, right? Because it's kind of like, if you look at your, you know, shows like Deadwood, where they talk about how people would go to try to stake their claim and make it rich, but whenever they would find a little bit of gold, they just go and spend it all on, like, sex and alcohol, right? You know, I mean, we still do that nowadays, right? But in the midst of all this, there's this one prim and proper woman who's in this really rough community there because her son went there to stake out his father's claim, and he's gone missing. Everybody pretty much assumes he's dead, but she shows up trying to find him. She's stubborn. She's going to be there. They keep trying to tell her, no, you don't want to be here. This is a dangerous place to be, because there's actual literal monsters there. She's trying to figure out what's happening with her son, but 3 issues in, and really nothing has happened aside from just the premise. So I'm jumping off, and that's a shame, because I was really excited for this book. And I really like these variant covers. I really do. But it's just not working. If it ain't working, just stop reading it. We got to focus on what we like. We got to stay positive. There's too much negativity in the world. Let's focus on the books, on the movies, on the stuff we like. Like, I'm going to always tell you the way it is. If I don't like something, there you go. If I feel like Marvel or DC or one of the other publishers is taking advantage of us, I'm going to mention it, right? But for the most part, I just want to focus in on what I like. And now I got this new thing again, like I used to do. If I'm just not digging it after a few issues, I'm just going to drop it, and The Rush is one of those for me. Anyway, what are you reading? What are you digging? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for checking out the video. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and join us over at patreon.com/PCP if you really want to help support the channel. But just being here and participating is support enough. We really do appreciate it. Thanks for rocking with us. I've been rocking Robbie Billups. Keep on reading. Station. Pop, pop, boom.